If you love your boxing and your MMA, this is the show for you. Find out extra of myself, Ade Oladipo, alongside the great Gareth Davies. We're less than 2 weeks out now from one of the biggest fight cards in British boxing history, Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. Today, the pair of us will discuss the chances of Daniel Dubois, the man considered the underdog by many. Does he have what it takes to cause a major upset and send an almighty shock through the heavyweight division? A big fight this weekend as well. Stateside, Canelo Alvarez takes on Edgar Berlanga in Vegas. The fight has been met, though, with some criticism by many, mainly Oscar De La Hoya, who has labelled it a snooze fest. We'll get into it and ask if the fight will indeed deliver. Plus, we are going to hear from Azim. He spoke to us at the weekend after his fight with Davies was announced for October. And we're going to try and squeeze in some UFC as well. UFC 306 from the Sphere in Las Vegas this weekend. All right, this is Fight Night Extra on talkSPORT 2. Gareth Davies, back from Paris, back from the Paralympics. How was it, my man?
It was amazing. It always is. I think the 8th iteration that I've been to of the Paralympic Games was the second best I've been to. I think London 2012 was always going to be the best. Paris, the only issue I'd kind of critique it for, apart from the wonderful games, the athletes, the stories, was the transport, that London kind of was better in transport terms, what they'd done with the park, what they had done with the park, and the structure of the games was amazing. It's a movement that's bigger than sport. That's all I've been doing the last week. It's a movement bigger than sport because perception on people with disabilities and accessibility are the two things that change their lives. So it's always great to be involved.
Did you say you've been to 8?
Yes.
Wow. That's incredible. Covered 8 Paralympics.
Yeah.
So wait, what was the first one then? My maths are bad.
Atlanta in 1996.
Oh, okay. Atlanta 96.
Okay. When you really were in nappies.
Yeah, no. No, I probably was.
I don't think you were quite in nappies, but it's
still in secondary school. I was though.
So yeah, it was a long time ago, but it was. I think it's like all those things that when you're passionate about something, you've got to stick with it, because the longer you do it, the better you can serve it in a way.
So
I'd like to see
changes as well.
Yeah, you see the changes exactly. How was your week?
Good, quiet. It's been a quiet week. Obviously, look, we've had a little downtime when it comes to the sport of boxing or mixed martial arts that we cover here. No sort of big events. I always feel bad saying that because there's always events, as you know. I mean, there's always shows all over the world, but no like gigantic ones in the last few days. So yeah, it's just been a case of getting ready for what we've got coming up in the next 2 weeks. I covered for you. I filled in on Fight Night with Adam Cattrall. I was in your seat, which is strange for me because I'm normally in sort of the host seat, but it was actually nice to be in the other seat for a change.
You can give your opinion, can't you? You can opinionate more. Exactly.
Yeah, this is it. So it was a nice seat to be in, but I'm more than happy for you to have it back on the weekend.
Well, that's very kind of you.
That's okay. That's okay. No choice. All right, a couple of weeks away now from Ade Dubois. Look, Dubois has been saying all the right things. We're hearing good things from his camp. Don Charles has been speaking so well about him as well. Obviously, look, AJ is the favourite. I think most would concede to that. What kind of chance, though, do you give a Dubois? Like, if you're sort of playing it in percentage terms, what percentage chance do you give Dubois in this?
He's got to take it with his two huge, big hands, this opportunity. He's got the right mindset. He's in the last week, he said, I feel like the Kingslayer. I like that expression. He's put Joshua up there on a pedestal. The fact he's putting Joshua up there on a pedestal is a good thing, because this is an ambition he's had for a very long time to beat Anthony Joshua. We know all the gym stories, the things that people talk about, the fact that he's gone very well against Anthony Joshua in the gym. He just needs to put it into practice in a ring right now. I like the fact he went there and he had that steely face when they had the press conference behind the scenes. He was trying to wind Anthony Joshua up. He'll have taken some kind of succor from that, some kind of joy and delight. Don Charles has been very good for him because he's setting the mindset very cleverly and carefully. Frank Warren's important. Stan, Dubois' father's important. They're all important because Dubois' got the physical assets to win the fight, got to win the battle of the jab, detonate his right hand, get on the inside with Anthony Joshua and believe, because that's where he's doubted before. He's had doubts against Joe Joyce. He had doubts against Alexander Usyk in that fight. He didn't in the last two fights. He weathered the storm of doubt against Jarrell Miller. He put that into practice against Filip Hrgović. So he's just got to continue that momentum.
So you just pointed out a couple of things there, which I thought was interesting. And it kind of made me think, they're quite smart with Daniel Dubois. He is inexperienced, right? Daniel Dubois is only 26. But you mentioned a few names there, and he's got a lot of experience behind him. You mentioned Frank, you mentioned Don, his father. So although Daniel might be inexperienced, the team behind him have seen it and done it. And I just wonder how much of a factor that's going to play on a big night.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do think it is. I think Frank Warren's always backed him to the hilt. Frank Warren backed him against Usyk, that it wasn't a low blow against Usyk. I mean, I don't know whether you think it was a low blow or not, but I've had long rows with Frank Warren about it. It's still going on. He will not have it that it was a low blow. But, Daniel Dubois, just as I say, he's got all the physical assets. What he needed was the backing and belief and growth. And I think 2 years on, or a year on from Usyk, 3 years on from Joe Joyce, he's a very different animal.
Yeah.
And I like the fact he's traveling the world a bit more on his own. I think he's got a girlfriend in Brazil, hasn't he? He's been training in Brazil. He's been out on his own there. Almost like he's had his rite of passage. The native has left the village kind of thing. The youngster has left the village to go and find his manhood. And it's a weird thing to talk about with him because he's already had so many big fights. But maybe he's just reaching manhood mentally in terms of his fighting days.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And look, I think it's going to be an incredible fight. And I've already said, I think we're in the must-win camp for AJ. Like AJ has to win. I can't see AJ wanting to rebuild again if he does lose, especially if he loses this one. Because let's be honest, this fight probably isn't going to go points, so someone's going to get knocked out. So if AJ were to get knocked out by Dubois, I can't see it happening again. The rebuild. If Dubois loses, I can see a rebuild because he's only 26. Not saying there's no pressure on Dubois because there still is a huge amount of pressure. He's the IBF heavyweight champion. But I feel like all the pressure here is on AJ. That AJ just has to get this done because of fights being spoken about in the future and because he's been a former unified heavyweight champion. He has to win this fight.
Yeah, there is more pressure on Anthony Joshua. I don't think there's any two ways about it. And I completely agree that there isn't a rebuild. Well, there's probably a couple of fights left for Anthony Joshua. The trouble is they've talked about the rebuild. They've talked about three-time heavyweight champion of the world. It's the way that they've built this fight. It's the way that Eddie Hearn's driven this fight. That Anthony Joshua was so ambitious to be three-time heavyweight champion of the world. We haven't really heard that from Anthony Joshua. So the narrative does put pressure on him. He has to win. It's weird with Anthony because he always has to win, doesn't he? And it's just one of those things. It's because we expect so much from him that it's two completely different courses for these guys. Daniel Dubois can come back and win a world title again. Hannah's got great fights out there against other people, depending on how he loses. I mean, if he gets sparked out in a minute and a half by Anthony Joshua, who just beats him up, then it's different, and it will be a difficult rebuild. But there's great fights out there for him. There's Agit Kabayel, there's Joseph Parker, there's Mo Itauma, there's so many fights. There's a rematch with Joe Joyce if he wants it. He's had an unusual career in lots of ways. He's been really well managed. But the thing is for Joshua, as you rightly point out, and I completely agree with it, that this is a moment in which, because people have talked about the fight with Anthony Joshua, with Tyson Fury as well, everybody wants that fight. The pressure on him is to win almost for the greater good of a big fight happening as well. So he won't be focusing on that. It's just us talking about that. He won't even be worrying about it because he's got this big monster with a very heavy right hand and a decent jab in front of him, who believes in himself.
Yeah.
In 12 days' time.
Yeah, no, it's going to be something special. Again, we're hearing 96, 97,000.
Oh, it's 97 now.
97.
Oh, it's gone up.
It's gone up. Gone up a couple more.
Wow.
Which is insane. Big fight card in Las Vegas as well. I'm not talking about MMA. We'll get to that in a minute, people. I'm talking about Canelo Alvarez taking on Edgar Berlanga, a Mexican versus a Puerto Rican. Those have always been interesting over the years. I will say this. It's been a long time since I've been interested in a Canelo fight. Like, I'm not that interested in this one. Whereas there was a time when Canelo was must-see viewing for me. Like, I would wait up till 5 a.m. or set the alarm or go out and come back and turn it on. I'm trying to think of the last time I've been like very excited. And I was thinking, was it Golovkin 3? But was that only because it was Golovkin and I was there? Like, I wasn't too excited about John Ryder. Munguia didn't kind of give me anything. Jamel Charlo, not really. Caleb Plant. Billy Joe Saunders, maybe. I think the Billy won because we knew how good Billy was and Billy sold the fight well. And it's strange to say that because Canelo's given us so much. But I'm not that infused by an Edgar Berlanga showdown. And I can always tell that the public aren't because it's not trending. It's not doing much.
No, the press conference for Edgar Berlanga was quite interesting, but
yeah, it was.
Munguia, Charlo, Ryder, an aging Golovkin, the loss to Dmitry Bivol, it was probably that one, and that was May 2022. Even before that, Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, and Avni Yildirim, Callum Smith, Sergei Kovalev. In all those fights, really, it's his loss that has interested us. As I say, I think it was an aged Golovkin that he fought in that contest. So really, in the last 7 or 8 fights, if you go back to Billy Joe Saunders, I suppose we were all watching that definitely, but it's Bivol. That was the one, and it was a loss. So he's got the white elephant in the room that's there every time his fight is announced that it's not David Benavidez. And, the writing is on the wall. So many people have said it now that they just think he's avoiding him, or at least avoiding him till his very last fight, which the Saudi Arabians want to make happen. But at the moment, we're not in that place. It is disappointing. He's a 16-1 on favourite. And the problem is with some of these fights, if Canelo has a really bad night and Berlanga has a really good night, it could be a very close fight. But I think it'll be a late stoppage or an easy points victory for Saul Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Edgar Berlanga's got this shot just because he's got a powerful promoter in Eddie Hearn. He's not really deserved it. He's not, Berlanga's not beaten someone to warrant this. I mean, it's a warrant fight in a pound for pound star, one of the greatest fighters of this generation. So, interesting to see how that plays out. Some interesting fights in the undercard as well. Danny Garcia is fighting Erislandi Lara for a middleweight title, although they've come in at a catch weight of 157 pounds for some reason. Roddy Romero's on the card, Caleb Plant's on the card. So they're trying, but ultimately, I don't know. De La Hoya said it would be a snooze fest, not infused by it.
He's going to the UFC.
Yeah. And I mean, we know he's beef with Dana White. I mean, they've never seen eye to eye. So for him to openly come out and say that, I mean, but we know he doesn't like Canelo, but I mean, it is strange for a boxing promoter to poo-poo on boxing.
Yeah, well, Oscar does his, what's it called? Flashback, clapback Thursdays or something he does. It does pop up on my timeline. And he's got it in for Canelo.
Big time.
The whole time. I mean, I think there's genuinely some hatred there. But also Dana White said, Oscar De La Hoya and I have never got on, so I won't be getting him a ticket to come to our Noche on Saturday night. So the triumvirate of rivalry is going on here, there, and everywhere. It's Oscar De La Hoya is a fascinating character at the moment, and I know we're segueing into the UFC event, UFC 306, but it's a shame but it does happen in boxing. They were the closest people in the world for 5 years, and then they no longer were. And Canelo doesn't like Oscar. He believes he was used for slave labor by him, that he owes him money, all this kind of stuff. So until that's rectified, and it probably will be after his career, we won't know exactly what the detail on that is.
Yeah. All right, you're listening to Find Out Extra on talkSPORT 2. Still to come, we are going to discuss the alleged snooze fest between Canelo and Berlanga, as we've just touched on. We also are going to hear from Azim too, who popped into the studio on Saturday night. But up next, we're going to outline the case for Daniel Dubois ahead of his huge fight with AJ, which is now less than 2 weeks away. Welcome back. You're listening to Find Out Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo Gareth, Davies. All right, let's do a deep dive into Riyadh season Wembley card. Remember, it is headlined by AJ versus Daniel Dubois. One thing that I want to just sort of get your point of view, get your opinions on, is the fact that there is a belt on the line. Daniel Dubois is now the IBF heavyweight world champion. And the reason I want to do this because Carl Froch, who has somewhat turned into a bit of a troll over the last sort of month or so year, I said that none of these guys will legitimately feel like a world champion. Obviously, it's a belt that was vacated. But, you look at the history books, there's been so many vacated belts and no one talks about them. Another person fights for it and they're world champion. Will AJ feel like a world champion if he wins? I mean, Daniel Dubois has already said he is the world champion. He feels like a world champion. What's your take on this?
Well, it's just the way that the Wild West is run, isn't it? But we can't do anything about it. It's one of the failings of the boxing system, and it's one of the failings of having 4 world titles, that you always have portions of the belt. We know that the undisputed champion is Alexander Usyk. That's why he's making that point. Alexander won all 4 belts. He won them earlier this year against Tyson Fury. He was only able to hold on to that IBF title for a short space of time. He relinquished it when it would have been taken off him anyway. Daniel Dubois holds he doesn't really hold the belt. He beat the guy who was the interim champion and the mandatory challenger for that belt. So really, apart from the gloss, if you like, the show window of the IBF Usyk relinquishing the belt, it's a shop window belt more than anything. But like I said at the top of the show, Anthony Joshua will be able to be called a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world if he wins. It's an irregular, unsatisfactory algorithm that we have with all the belts, and I don't know if there's a solution to it outside saying we get rid of all the belts, and there's just one championship, and people fight for it. Over the last 50,
that's the solution, isn't it? That's it.
It is the solution, but over the last 50 years, the belts have, they're not statutory bodies. They're self-invented sanctioning bodies. They invented themselves.
Yeah.
So when you win a world,
that means we can invent another. We can get rid of them.
Yeah.
A bit like what the UFC have done and invent our own.
You could.
Yeah.
But yes, you could just do that, but then what you need in order to make that work is you need the right group of people and the right, again, algorithm to create the ranking system, because you need that ranking system then to go with it. You can't just arbitrarily choose who's going to fight for the belt at that point. You know?
Well, we say that, but a lot of these, as you say, self-appointed sanctioning bodies seem to do that. They seem to allow whoever their champion is to pick whoever he wants.
And relationships with promoters and all those kind of things. It's it's just the way of boxing, and until you're right deep down in the roots on the inside, you don't understand that. No. But so Carl has a very, very valid point, even though you might call him a troll. Because people questioned him. He fought for the vacant WBC title against Jean Pascal in Nottingham 2008. Tyson Fury's debut that night as a pro.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure I've said that to you before. On that, but it was a brilliant fight. So he wins the vacant WBC. He lost the WBC, but when he won the IBF against Lucien Boutte, he did win the IBF veritably that night. But Carl makes a good point about it, and it's a point worth remembering rather than hammering home too much, because I don't know whether we will ever get to the point where we've only got 17 or 18 world champions with one champion in each weight division. I don't know if it's doable.
Yeah, I almost feel like the last 18 months have been the closest we've got to it, where there have been a few undisputeds in different weight classes. And you're like, okay, we now know that is the number one person without a shadow of a doubt. But you're right, now all of a sudden these belts are they've all been fragmented and splintered, and now all of a sudden we've got random champions. Or like the IBF super middleweight champion is someone I can't even remember who's going to fight for the belt because Canelo's vacated or been stripped. So yeah, we are all over the place with it. But look, AJ will either be a 3-time heavyweight world champion or Daniel Dubois will solidify himself as the IBF champion. It's strange to say, but it is.
The last time, it's one of the reasons why, if you look back at the Wilder-Klitschko, the end of Klitschko and Deontay Wilder's long run, he had that, whatever it was, 11 defenses, I think it was 11, it might be 9, of the WBC title. But even when Vladimir Klitschko held all the others, but we never got those two in a ring together, which I think is really odd. And I think it was for a reason, which was Klitschko could manage to defend 3 and had the relationships with the sanctioning bodies to defend the 3, but not the WBC as well, because that would have fractured all the belts. So he decided to go along and have those 3 belts for as long as he could. Because it's one of those things that always bugged me that those two never went into a ring together.
Imagine, like, we understand this. I mean, you certainly understand it more than me, having covered the sport way longer. Imagine an outsider listening to this and trying to understand the sport of boxing when it comes to belts and mandatories and sanctioning bodies and friendships with sanctioning bodies and governing bodies. It's impossible.
It's so impossible, but it's also fascinating as well. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's what makes boxing quite fascinating too. The layers of it, the politics of it. So I just think it's developed in an inexact way, and it's a business as much as it is a sport. Boxing, we mustn't forget that. And around those things, that's how the business runs.
It certainly is. Let's get back to the main event. Let's hear from one man who sparred both fighters, the young, brilliant Moses Itauma. He popped into the studio last week and he gave his view on the fight.
You've sparred with Daniel Dubois, right? What was that experience like?
Many rounds. First time I sparred him was when I was 17. I was just sparred him. He was getting ready for Kevin Lorena, and I was getting ready for the World Championships as an amateur. And yeah, them rounds are very interesting. Very interesting.
How interesting?
As interesting as it gets. I don't really know. I don't want to say too much.
Well, let me throw a question at you. Then you've also sparred Anthony Joshua when you were younger as well.
Yeah.
Your experiences in the ring with both of them. Who do you think wins?
Do you know? I'm not going to use the sparring as like.
But you know their strengths and their weaknesses.
Not too much, AJ, but probably Dubois. I do know a lot. But do you know what it is? It's all down to preparation with fights. Like you can have 2 trainers. And then have 2 trainers, same fighter, and completely different. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like with preparation, I think this is the key. And I'm not gonna lie, Ben Davison's got it on lock.
Do you believe that both guys have got a chance of winning this fight?
1,000,000%. On 1,000,000%. I just think AJ's got a bit more chance than Dubois.
But you do give Dubois a shot.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
100%. Dubois not a fool. Do you know what I mean? He didn't start boxing yesterday. Like I heard, like he went obviously through the whole England program, the amateurs and all that. Do you know what I mean? So I've got to give him a little bit of respect. But it's just like I feel like what AJ's been through in his career and the experiences has, and not only that, yeah, Ben Davison, Lee Wiley, and Barry in the corner. I feel like that's going to play a big part in it.
As you heard him there, said it's going to be a very, very close fight. Again, he's been in the ring with both recently. He is now, I will say this, part of Ben Davison's team. He does favour AJ. I'm not saying that's the reason why, but he's part of the team, and it'll be random be very strange for someone to be part of a team and then favor someone else. But he favors AJ, but in a very, very close fight. What does Dubois do better than AJ?
It's a very good question. My first reaction was not a lot, but then he's shown a great resilience in his last couple of fights.
Could that be it then?
What does he do better? He probably takes shots better than Anthony Joshua does, I'd say.
I wouldn't argue with that.
I think, again, they've both, from the outside, when we've looked at them, they've both had self-belief issues, we suspect, at some point. Yeah. Who doesn't, in all honesty? It's how you mask it or how you don't as a fighter, I suppose. But I'd say that. I think he takes a shot better. I think he's probably got a better chin, I think.
No, I mean, look, he took some big smacks from Jarrell Miller and Hrgovic, some real big smacks. And that's one thing he said on the face-off when I mentioned that. And he pointed at AJ and said, could he take those shots? So it's almost like he was saying it, like knowing, like, okay, yeah, I took him. I got hit, but I took him. Could you do it? So I think even he believes I've got a better chin than you, maybe more resilient than you. I spoke to our very own Spencer Oliver, and he thinks that Dubois probably has a better jab.
It's more prominent and it's more memorable. His jab is more memorable than Anthony Joshua's. But I think Joshua, when he's got his jab working right, is very, very good with it as well. And I think Joshua works really well off the jab. So does Dubois. I do think it's going to be a battle of the jab. They both detonate the right hand off the jab. You know, they're not a guy, neither of them is a guy that's suddenly going to pull out a right lead. A la Muhammad Ali against who knows, I may be wrong about this, but you know, a la George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle. But they're both I think Dubois is slightly more fluid about how he throws his punches. But when Joshua's that big rock'em sock'em and he's got his movement right and he's in and out, he's so big and booming and dangerous. I'm getting excited thinking about this fight because I think they're going to feel each other out for about 6 minutes and then we're just going to have war.
Yeah.
And it's going to be who detonates, you know?
I'm so with you on it. I think they're going to look at each other and it's going to be very, okay, and then bang.
Yeah.
And then we'll, man, oh man, let's see who has more power because both of them, as you say, really big, strong guys, powerfully built. One considerably younger than the other. And I wonder if that will play a part as well. Because I do think Dubois' gas tank, I think we saw it with Jarrell Miller. He seems to be able to go all the way. Like he knocked Jarrell Miller out in the last few seconds of the last round. So we know his power lasts all the way up until the final minute. So I can't wait for it. Another trailer has been released. The trailer for this one, produced by Guy Ritchie. What did you make of it?
Well, it's Zombieland, isn't it? You know.
What is the fascination with zombies, by the way?
I don't know.
There seems to be a fascination that I need to ask Turkey about him and zombies.
I was watching it thinking, why are they all zombies kind of coming out of the, you know, that kind of darkness and but listen, it was a brilliant piece of filmic work. The boxers all seemed to enjoy it. They obviously needed to get them in the same room at one time. It really worked. It's fascinating. Again, I don't really know what relevance it has to the guys involved in the fights. You know, I don't know what the hook is for it. Did you manage to?
No, it confused me. I have to be honest with you. Like I didn't quite get it, and I almost felt like. Did you remember that? I don't know if you remember the Daniel Cormier John Jones promo. Was there? I think it might have been their second fight, where the video is all about John Jones and the trouble he's been through, and DC being the nice guy. I almost felt like this could have just been your old school basic trailer about a story of AJ and Dubois. Like resilience and mentality. I don't know. You don't always need to spend millions and get an Oscar-winning director in. I feel like
but
it's a bit simple.
But it's the Saudis, and they like to do things bigger and better and all of those things and throw loads of money at it. And I think, to be fair to them, they wanted to include all the boxers on the card as well, didn't they? So I think it's got to be this fantasy horror movie thing where they all turn up in the end and they're all killing each other and fighting each other. Because I don't see another way that they needed one storyline for all of them, didn't they? Which is that warrior mentality never dies, even when they're zombified. So it was great fun. I can't remember what happens at the end.
They all get in the ring. They all fly to the ring and then start fighting the people that
they're meant to fight.
Yeah. I don't know, something. I felt sorry for Mark Chamberlain's opponent, Josh Padley, I think his name is. Yeah. Who wasn't in it.
Oh.
Yeah, wasn't in it. Wasn't in it.
Oh, that's
you
spotted it, or you?
Spotted it. No, I spotted it. I was like, wait, where is he? I was like, someone's missing here.
So was Mark Chamberlain wandering around the ring trying to find someone to fight?
Pretty much. Yeah. I didn't see his opponent. I was like, what's going on? Could they have not used him? What's happening? It's a bit out of order. But hey, it is what it is. All right, you're listening to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Up next, we're going to look ahead to this weekend's big fight in Las Vegas between Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga. Welcome back. You're listening to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo, Gareth Davies. All right, the great Canelo Alvarez returns on the weekend, and he is still that. He is still a great, multi-weight world champion. Still very much the king of the 168-pound division. Still very much, for me, a guy that exists in the pound-for-pound top 5 or 6. But he does take on Edgar Berlanga. It's a fight that no one really was screaming for, but it's a fight that has been chosen for Canelo, or Canelo's chosen for himself. How excited are you for this one, Gareth?
I've got to say it feels very run-of-the-mill, even though I shouldn't say that about a modern great who's in the top 3 or top 5 pound for pound in the world right now. As we touched on at the top of the show, something could happen that could make it an amazing fight. That Canelo has a bad night and Berlanga has a purple patch, but it's going to take that for it to be an amazing fight, in my view. Shocks do happen in boxing, upsets do happen. I hope it's not going to be against Berlanga, because it's the fight we all want is against David Benavidez. Whether Canelo is too small ultimately, whether he fears his legacy against Benavidez, I don't know, but that's what it looks like at the moment.
Have you seen, I'm guessing you've seen the face-offs they've had at the press conferences. Have you seen the size of Berlanga?
Yeah.
And the reason I point that out is because Canelo's excuse over the last 12 months has been that Benavidez is basically too big. He's going to come in over 200 pounds. That's it, blah, blah, blah. He hasn't said that about Berlanga.
No.
Hasn't mentioned Berlanga's size once.
Well, we all know that Benavidez is a come-forward wrecking ball with very straight punches, who's very aggressive, who's targeted Canelo for a long time, who's got the sport on his side. Berlanga isn't, physically he's a big man, obviously, bigger than Canelo, taller than Canelo, but Canelo is a very compact, dangerous fighter. And in all this critique that we have of him, you talk to people like John Ryder, who I did speak to in depth about Canelo after he lost to him, was the tiny adjustments that Canelo makes in a ring when you're in there with him, what hard work it is to fight against him. And obviously Ryder gave his all. I think we mustn't forget just how talented Canelo is. I just think he's gone off the boil in terms of he's making great money.
Yeah.
He's moved himself around. He's with Al Heyman now, and he's just making a ton of money for a fight that he's nailed down to win. And that's the problem with going into this contest. We're getting so many fights now that aren't one-sided, aren't in favour of the house fighter, and I think there's a general level of dissatisfaction with it, and so you don't really want to stay up till 5 a.m. to watch it. You don't want to watch the whole event necessarily, so it's a difficult one.
Yeah, no, it is. And look, it's a fight that I think's lacked promo up until last week, where it got a bit of free promo from Canelo's former promoter, Oscar De La Hoya. This is what Oscar had to say about Canelo versus Berlanga.
Okay, so we're a week away from the boxing match that nobody asked for, right? And the UFC event that everybody will be watching. Canelo's fighting Berlanga, another snooze fest. They're trying to sell a pay-per-view for $90 and $500 minimum in person. It's just robbery at this point to pay for another lame Canelo fight that always goes the distance against a subpar opponent. I'll actually be attending the UFC event at the Sphere instead. So now, I love the sport of boxing more than anything, and I will be watching boxing matches anywhere and anytime, even if it's a simple sparring session or two bums fighting in the street. So the idea I'm choosing to attend the UFC and support Dana White instead of Canelo tells you everything you need to know. Dana, I can't wait to see you next Saturday, buddy. I see that you got the same ab surgery I got. I always knew you wanted to be like me, bro. It will be great to hang out with you face to face. Let's go!
Oscar completely ripping that one another backside. Oscar's turned into a fantastic... He's always been a character, but he's almost taken it up another notch now with these things that he does every single Thursday. And he attacks anyone and everyone. And look, he's been attacking Canelo for a while, but he's come to the point of this one saying it's a snooze fest. Like, these Canelo fights, a snooze fest. I mean, Oscar put on a couple of those, by the way, for Canelo, so he's almost referring to himself as well. But he's got a point, Oscar, in this one. I mean, I don't like a boxing promoter attacking a boxing event, because ultimately there are a lot of people that get paid for this, not just Canelo and Berlanga. There's loads of people that get paid behind the scenes. So I don't necessarily like that, but he's got a point.
Yeah, he has. You go back to some of the fights he had, the Liam Smiths, the Amir Khans, the Miguel Cotto, Julio Cesar Chavez. They were quite one-sided fights for Canelo at the time. But when
exactly,
the problem is he was so talented at the time they couldn't find the right opponents for him. The two toughest fights that he had were, in my view, or three. There's three fights that have been very tough for him. Four: Floyd Mayweather, he was only 23, and he was a raging bull that night against Mayweather. Mayweather, I think, was 35 or 34. I've been corrected on this before. Certainly Mayweather was 10 years older, and Mayweather picked him at the right time, got him at the right time. The two Golovkin fights, the first two Golovkin fights, I think he lost the first Golovkin fight 7 rounds to 5, or even 8 rounds to 4. That's the first time I've seen Canelo on his bike trying to avoid someone for a round and a half because he was hurt to the body. The second Golovkin fight was very close. I thought he won it. And the Bivol fight. Those are the 4, for me, outstanding fights in his career. And if he's going to go into the pantheon of greats, he does need to end his career with a massive contest. Whether that's against, again, you'll say he's too big, a Beterbiev rather than a Benavidez. You never know. He might have so much resentment and spite in him towards David Benavidez now that he may end up not fighting him. We've seen it before. Ricky Hatton never fought Junior Witter in the end because he didn't want to give him that payday.
Yeah, I'm adamant, and I'm happy. Sorry to cut across you, Gareth.
No,
I think you've hit the nail on the head here. I think he goes for Bivol if Bivol becomes undisputed. I think he goes to 175 again and rolls that dice with Bivol. Because physically, Bivol, you've been around Bivol, he's not as intimidating as a Beterbiev or even a David Benavidez. He's not that big. And he went there once, and I think he will think, this is the glory fight for me at 175. because it's not going to be Crawford, I don't think. It's not going to be Benavidez. I think Beterbiev's scary, frightening. Bivol almost seems to be the one at 175 if he becomes undisputed. So for Canelo to kind of call it a day, having become undisputed at another weight class, well, the chance to be would be incredible, I think.
Yeah, that's a great call. I mean, he may well be waiting that one out as well. We say waiting out. He's still got to fight Edgar Berlanga on Saturday night.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Just to remind our listeners or viewers as well that he's fighting Berlanga. But that's a really good call, actually, because that does make sense. Because it was a close fight against Bivol. The style suits him, and like you say, that undisputed tag and the chance to rematch it. He talks about wanting the rematch, and it's a fight Bivol would take.
Yeah, and it's a fight then that, again, all parties, because now Bivol's a Riyadh season fighter. If Turkey's trying to get a Canelo, obviously, look, both of them have got to get past, interesting tasks. One's got to get past Berlanga, one's got to try and get past Beterbiev. But if it can happen, I feel like that's a fight that they might do in May. I think Bivol will take it, Canelo will take it, and it'll make a lot of money, and people will finally be excited about a Canelo fight. So I think it ticks all boxes. What chance do you give Berlanga this weekend? Any at all? Punches?
Yeah, punches chance. But also, it's as I've said almost twice already, that Canelo needs a massive off night or an injury or something freaky to happen. Because even though we sit here criticising him, he's still a brilliant boxer. And he's still at the tail end. He's at the tail end of his career, but he is still great. The problem is, when someone's great, when they've been there a long time, we just want more all the time, and we're in that kind of sport.
Yeah, we're greedy. We
are greedy.
Thinking one second, I've been doing this since I was 15. I've given you 20 years of me. Can I not just have a few easy ones, a few gimmies? And we're like, no, you can't. All right. Welcome back. You are listening to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Up next, we are going to hear from a very talented 140-pound fighter, the young Ade Azim. Welcome back to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo, the great Gareth Davies. All right, let's talk young Ade Azim, who came into the talkSPORT studios over the weekend. Ade Azim was scheduled to fight Harlem Eubank. That fight has fallen through. He now will take on Davies. This is why. He explains.
Booked for June 15th, and we've had some trouble during that time because obviously I pulled out due to injury on my ankle. So obviously I can't do nothing about it, but obviously it's down to me because of my health, and obviously I want to be fully fit for the fight. So obviously there was no excuse for me to pull out the fight. It was just an injury I had, and so we were initially going to fight again after that, and then obviously the date got moved again. So it was initially going to fight on October 5th at Brighton at his home turf. Right. So it was all done.
His backyard.
His backyard, yeah. So
was that signed?
That was all done. Like, everything was just done. He didn't sign on his side. His negotiation didn't come back to us. So I know he said a few times on the interview saying that I'm the one who didn't come back with the negotiation. I don't pull out with no fights. I was waiting for that fight for a very long time. And the funniest thing is, he's pulled out the fight, and then my dad was in China doing a bit of work out there. He saw Harlem Eubank in China at the airport.
How random.
At random. My dad literally pulled him aside and goes, "What's going on? Why is the fight not happening?" And obviously, I think he said about some other stuff going on or something like that. But you know what? It looks like obviously I was ready for the fight. I was prepared. I was, everything was done. I was going to go to his backyard and fight him. But then then he had no reason to pull out. So I think he just didn't want the smoke. I'm not going to lie about that.
So Ade Azim taking on Davies. By the way, I will say this. I feel sorry for both, by the way. I feel sorry for Ade Azim. I feel sorry for Harlem Eubank more so, because it would have been a big fight for him. I like the Davies fight, though, a lot.
I think it's a great test for him. Davies, what is he, 20, 28 fights in, 25 wins in his career. He's a 32-year-old, he could old man Adam if it doesn't go right for him. Obviously, he's coming off the loss to Ismael Barroso. But when you look at his only other losses are Jack Catterall and Josh Taylor, he's been in against some great opposition. Miguel Vasquez, Tyrone McKenna. There's plenty of guys. Lewis Ritson, he's beaten. You go back in his career and he beat Derry Matthews. He's a very solid opponent for Adam Azim to have. How much O'Hara's got left, I don't know, but it's a big test for Adam Azim, 11 fights into his career.
Agreed. Big test. And they know each other well as well. They both used to work under Tunde Ajayi. Obviously, Tunde, the trainer of Anthony Yard, when Adam was very young and O'Hara was there. So there's a lot of respect between the two. That they know each other. And I think it's a good matchup. I mean, O'Hara Davis was on the cusp of fighting for a world title. If he were to have beaten Ismael Barroso, he's fighting for a world title next. So that's where he was. And he just got caught cold. He got caught in the first round and he don't recover from them. So we'll see how this one plays out. Again, I do feel sorry for Harlem Eubank. He wanted the fight. It would have been a big fight for him. He's now talking about going up to 147, which is interesting because you know who he's going to chase there, a certain Conor Benn. But we'll see how it plays out for both. This is what O'Hara had to say. O'Hara was on talkSPORT as well on Fight Night. We got him on to speak about this fight. This is what he had to say about taking this fight.
So I've learned to not think too far ahead. I'm just thinking about this next fight. As far as I'm concerned, this next fight, I'm going to retire. As far as I'm concerned, this is my last fight. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just here to win this fight. It's my only goal, to win this fight in good fashion.
I found that interesting from O'Hara. O'Hara, they're basically saying, look, this could be my last fight. And I've always, when fighters say that, Gareth, I'm always like, does that mean there's 1 foot out? Or are you telling yourself you have to win? Like, what is it?
Well, we know who the house fighter is here. It's Adam Azim, and no one on this promotion wants him to lose. So O'Hara's being brought in to give him a big test. And like you say, if he's saying it's his last fight, he's probably getting well paid.
Yeah.
Psychologically, he needs to deliver, but not win. But if he does win, he'll fight again because it'll be a rematch with Adam Azim. He might win as well if there's enough desire there, but he's going to.
I honestly think this is a bit of a banana skin. I really do.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Big guy, experienced. O'Hara's been there, done it. He's fighting basic in his backyard, Copper Box. O'Hara's a 5-minute walk from there. He lives in Hackney. Copper Box is on the border of Hackney and Stratford, so he's going to have a lot of support as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. That's in October, so we'll unpack that closer to time. We've got some minutes here. Let's quickly talk about UFC 306. It will take place in the Sphere, the Vegas Sphere. I think it'll be the one and only time that the UFC go there, or at least that's what Dana said. They are going to honor Mexican independence as well, so there's going to be a big Mexican feel to it, and it's headlined by Sean O'Malley versus Merab. If I'm honest with you, I thought the card would be a bit more stacked. If I'm honest with you, I thought, okay, this is the Sphere. It's got the Riyadh season back in. I thought they would go as big as humanly possible on this one, and I don't think they have.
Well, I'm looking down the card. Obviously, it's across the road from Saul Canelo Alvarez and Berlanga as well, which is fascinating. I don't remember a night when there's been such a big boxing event and a really big UFC event on the same night. Sean O'Malley is one of the biggest kind of characters in the UFC at the moment, with his dyed hair and his skill set and his 18-1 record. With 1 no contest. Merab Dvalishvili is a fascinating fighter as well. It's going to be a great main event. Alexa Grasso, Valentina Shevchenko they're both big names, women's flyweights. And then featherweights. I know Diego Lopez is a coming name and he's just kind of a star in the sport.
Yeah.
With his manga hairstyle and all of that. I'm not sure. Can't even call it a mullet because it's
beyond that.
I don't know what you call it, and I don't like it when he's fighting and it flops in his face. Against Brian Ortega, who's really an old boy of the division now.
When you think of when he first sort of entered it nearly a decade ago, he's been around for a long time. He just doesn't know what weight he wants to fight at.
And then
that's it.
That's it. I mean, that's why I read them out. I think that's it. I don't. I mean, I don't even know many of the others. You know?
And if you don't know them, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
So, and that's my thing. I thought, this big thing about going to the Sphere, and it looks incredible. I thought, and obviously, again, the honor Mexicans. I thought maybe you try and find a bit more. But again, me and you have spoken about this, the lack of sort of superpowers, superstars in the UFC, and I think it shines through here. But I mean, as you say, though, the main event's a good one. You got a striker versus a wrestler. Let's see how that plays out. And an ex-aggressor versus Valentina Shevchenko. That's their third fight trilogy, so that should be interesting as well. So there is some intrigue in it, but I just thought it was going to go bigger. That's what
who else would you put on there?
I don't know what the hell's going on with Khamzat Chimaev. What has happened to him? Like, because this guy a few years ago was literally going to be the pound for pound king, a multi-weight world champion, and now he seems to be MIA.
Yeah.
Like,
well, the last thing I read was on social media where he was blaming Darren Till for trying to give him too much chocolate.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they did their little Twitter space thing, didn't they?
Yeah.
And obviously, look, they must have wanted Conor to be fit and ready for this date as well. But I mean, if you're still trying to get Conor out, when he clearly doesn't seem to want to fight, then you're struggling for stars.
He doesn't need to fight. That's the thing. So, he might wake up one morning and want to be in a big event, but I think he's enjoying his life.
Yeah, he's doing exactly what I think everyone should do. And just live. I'll do it. Everything Conor McGregor, maybe apart from a couple of things, but I'll be living that life for now. I'll tell you. All right, Gareth, my man, thank you very much. And by the way, happy birthday as well.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday to you. I'm guessing 49, 50?
You got it.
There you go. Cool. We'll have a toast when we see each other in person during AJ Fight Week, I'm guessing. All right, you've been listening to Fight Night Extra on talkSPORT 2. Remember, if you've missed any of the show, you can listen to it as a podcast. Find it under the Fight Night banner on the talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts from. We'll be back, as always, next week.